Hey everybody, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and today I'm reviewing the retro arcade miniature game console that comes with 360 built-in games from Famicom and NES. And this has a nice cool look to it because it kind of resembles a mini Neo Geo, only much smaller. So let's take a look. So here's a quick look at the box it comes in, and there's really not a whole lot going on with this box. It just advertises the 360 games in one and the contents of what's inside. Here's a look at the miniature arcade itself, and I actually like the looks of this quite a bit. It does have a volume button on the side there. Then on the back we have two controller ports, or they can be used as a charging port, along with an AV out. You got your on and off switch on that side. And then on the bottom we have a rechargeable battery. That's 3.7 volts, takes about 2 hours to charge, and you get about 6 hours playing time. As far as the quality of the construction goes, it seems to be pretty decent. The plastic's nice and thick, it's got all plastic buttons, and that joystick, I wish it was a little bit more rigid, but it does seem to work. And here's another miniature arcade that I reviewed recently. This is the A8 Retro Arcade, and as you can see, this is the little brother to the A8. The main difference though is this just plays NES and Famicom games only. And this bigger model plays Neo Geo, arcade, and various other formats, but it is quite a bit more. This smaller one that has 360 built-in games for NES and Famicom is priced right around 29 bucks, but there's also a coupon you can use down below and get this for only 26 bucks. Also inside the box you get two different controllers so you can play two-player games along with an AV cable and a charging cable, and I'd say these controllers are decent quality. They're nothing high-end, but they work. So I decided I wanted to take this apart to check out the insides, and I was actually pretty surprised at the circuit board and the circuitry. It's all really nice and clean looking. It seems to be built fairly well for what it is. I've took apart a lot of other clone consoles in the past, and the inside of those have looked horrendous. And just to let you know, this does not use any type of external or internal micro SD card for the games. All the games are pre-built into a chip that's going to be on that circuit board. Okay, it's time to go ahead and fire this up and see what we have going on for the games. And when you power it on, you're going to be greeted by a menu that asks you to select the language, whether you want English or Chinese. And it does have some menu music that is a little bit loud, but you can just turn that volume down. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at some of the games. We do have all the Turtle games, 1, 2, and 3. We got some Contra, Double Dragon, and most of these games do seem to be legit Famicom and NES games, but there is a couple homebrew and remix games that are mixed in throughout. You got all the Super Mario Brothers on here, 1, 2, and 3, along with some remixes. We got some Ninja Gaiden, Batman, Tiny Toon, Pac-Mania, and Angry Birds, which is obviously going to be a homebrew game. We also got some Dig Dug, Dr. Mario, F1 Race, Goonies, Kung Fu, Mickey Mouse, Miss Pac-Man, Paperboy, Sky Kid, Spy Hunter, and each of these games seem to have their own thumbnail, so that's a plus. And there is some games mixed in here that I just don't recognize, either because they're Famicom games or homebrew games, but there seems to be plenty of titles that I do recognize that seem to be solid titles. And let's see what else we got. We got Excited Bike, Galaga, Lode Runner, Mappy, Millipede, Pac-Man, Pac-Land, and various other different titles. So there's quite a few games to choose from. And as far as how many of these games are actually original NES or Famicom games, I have not had time to confirm this yet, but if I was to make a guess, I'd say about 70%. Okay, now it's time to test out a game, so let's try Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. And I recently played this game, so I should have a pretty good feeling for how this is playing. And I would say it actually plays fairly well. I can get to those rounds no problem, the controls seem to work like they should, and the sound is actually pretty decent. And one thing I would like to mention about the controls is that joystick does seem to be working and doing what it should, but that joystick itself is not super rigid. I'd say this is more of a light-duty joystick. So all I'm getting at with this joystick, you just want to kind of take it easy and be nice and gentle with it, because it probably wouldn't be able to take a lot of abuse if you're really hard on joysticks. As far as the graphics go, the games look nice and clean, nothing looks blurry. Even though this isn't an HD screen, it still looks pretty decent for what it is. But one thing I did notice about the graphics or that video output is there does seem to be a couple colors missing from the color palette, and I'll explain that here in just a few. And as far as the viewing angle for the screen, it seems to be really good. I can turn this all different directions, up, down, left, right, and I can still see that screen nice and clear. And from my own experience, I know with a lot of other clone consoles out there that have built-in screens that if you turn that left or right, that those colors wash out and then you can't see the screen no more. And that's something that really bothers me, so I'm glad that this one doesn't. And if you want to exit a game, you just push that reset button and that'll take you back to the main menu. And if you want to play a two-player game or just use a D-pad controller, it's simple to do. All you gotta do is just plug in a controller in the back and it's ready to go. With some games, I definitely prefer just using a D-pad controller because that's what I'm used to, like Super Mario Bros. And these controllers seem to work well for what they are. They're nothing amazing, but they do get the job done. Although it is a little bit confusing why they are 6-button controllers, because you can only use 4 of the buttons. So those first 2 buttons are just the regular A and B buttons, and then the second 2 are actually turbo buttons for A and B. And here's what I was talking about earlier about some of those colors missing from the video output. If you take a look at Mario, you can see that some of the colors don't look quite right. So I'd say that there's a couple colors missing from that video palette. But overall, I haven't found this to be a big deal, and I could still enjoy playing the games just fine. And for this game, Super Mario Bros. 3, I decided to do an accuracy test with that joystick and try the 1-up trick in round 2, and I was able to get that the first try. So even though I prefer using D-pads for the Mario games, I was able to get the hang of that joystick no problem. So I obviously haven't had time to test all 360 games, but for all the games I did try out, most of them seemed to play just fine. Really, the only game I tested that I had some issues with was a homebrew game, and that was Sonic the Hedgehog. The actual gameplay controls isn't so bad, but as far as the way it looks and sounds, it's not so good. But even though this game isn't that great, it's still cool to see Sonic in 8-bit NES form. As far as the value of this goes, I guess it's more of a point of perspective. For myself, I like NES games and I like miniature arcades, so I think it's worth it. It does have some small issues, but it also has a pretty good game lineup. It's got a lot of good titles mixed in there. Here's one thing to take in consideration. If you think of all the My Arcade units that are selling at Walmart and Target, those only have one NES game that's built inside of them, and those are selling for about 25 bucks. And this one's selling for about the same price, but it comes with a whole mess of NES and Famicom games already built in. And I would say the overall build quality of this is much better than those My Arcade units that just come with one NES game. And a couple other things I'd like to mention before I get out of here is that screen ratio does seem to be correct. I know I have reviewed some other miniature arcades in the past where that screen ratio seems to be off, but the screen on this seems to be the right size. And as far as trying to save your games, I haven't noticed any features for that yet, but I also haven't found any games on the list that use any type of battery save either. And one last thing, if you want to hook this to your big screen TV and play it, you can, but keep in mind this is just a composite signal. Okay, it's time for me to go. If you liked that video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe, and have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.